Taro didn't believe in softness. Not in the kind that came from silk sheets, quiet smiles, or warm hands. Softness, in his experience, got people killed. He leaned against the outer frame of the dropship's cargo hatch, eyes scanning the gray-blue cloud banks of planet Iron below. A thick haze hung over the highland valleys like morning cloth. Rain was coming. Maybe something worse. Taro didn't trust planets that stayed too quiet for too long. You must be Taro. The voice was human, female. Calm. Not the kind of calm that came from ignorance, this was a practiced calm. Calculated. And that, more than anything else, made Taro turn around. The woman approaching him wore a long black field coat, marked with a barely visible insignia of the Civilian Interspecies Research Cooperative. Not military. Not armed. At least not visibly. Shoulder-length dark hair tied loosely at the back, her gaze level and unreadable. "And you're Naira," Taro said, his voice gravel low. He didn't shake hands. She didn't offer one. "We've got 5 hours until weather disruption," she said, glancing down at her wrist display. "The research compound's been compromised. No communications. No updates for 48 hours. And no one's responded to the automated distress beacons." Taro didn't move. He didn't ask questions yet. Instead, he studied her. She didn't wear armor. Didn't carry a weapon, at least not openly. There was something else in her posture though, an unspoken tension in her jaw, the kind that came from knowing too much and surviving anyway. "And they sent you? A scientist?" Naira shrugged. "They sent me because I designed the AI systems used in the facility. And because the previous team of armed mercs lost contact 2 hours after landing." He raised an eyebrow. "So the brass figured," she added, voice dry, "maybe this time send someone who can get the doors open." Taro grunted. He respected pragmatism. They dropped into the atmosphere without ceremony. The shuttle vibrated under high-altitude turbulence as stormlight flickered around them. Taro didn't bother watching. He was already prepping weapons, 2 sidearms, a plasma knife, and a modded rifle with a grav suppressor. Naira sat quietly beside him, securing her datapad and securing the shock straps on her legs. She didn't ask about his weapons. Didn't ask if he thought they were walking into something suicidal. She just checked the NAV map again and closed her eyes. "You afraid of what we'll find?" Taro asked after a beat of silence. Her eyes opened slowly. "Not afraid. But I know what kind of tech was being tested down there." "You think it got loose?" She didn't answer immediately. "I think, we underestimated what the human nervous system is capable of, when isolated and reinterpreted." Taro stared at her. "That was vague," he said. "I'm trying not to give you nightmares before we land." The compound was nestled between 2 razor-edged ridgelines, covered in creeping bioluminescent moss and misted with constant drizzle. The landing platform was overgrown, the beacon flickering like a dying firefly. No bodies. No movement. But Taro's instincts were on fire. "Thermal?" Naira asked as they descended from the shuttle. Taro checked the scan. Nothing warm moving. Not even animal life. Whatever happened, it left the place hollow. Naira didn't respond. She keyed in a security override on the exterior access panel, fingers moving with quick, silent precision. Taro watched her from behind, eyes sharp. She didn't flinch when the door slid open with a low hiss. The air inside was still. Dry. Wrong. Taro moved first. Naira followed. They passed through empty corridors lit only by backup lighting, soft amber strips along the walls. Glass observation windows lined the passageways, but all the rooms beyond were dark, their contents obscured. Equipment lay scattered. Overturned chairs. Smudges on the floor that might have been blood but had dried too dark and crusted to tell. Naira paused at a console and tapped into the system. Taro took a position facing the corridor intersection. Someone tried to initiate a purge protocol, she muttered, voice barely above a whisper. Security override locked it out. So they saw it coming, Taro said. Whatever it was. She nodded. They pushed deeper into the facility. The main research hall had sustained some kind of structural damage, ceiling panels hanging, walls blackened in places like a fire had broken out but never spread. A lab door stood half open. Taro raised a hand, motioned Naira to wait. He went in first, rifle up. The room was trashed. Broken monitors. Shattered vials. Something sticky underfoot. And in the center of the room. Don't come in, he called sharply. Naira paused at the door. Someone dead. Taro lowered his weapon slowly. Not someone. Something. It looked like a human spinal column had been stretched out and reinforced with biotech, veins of silver mesh and translucent blue tubing replacing flesh. Wires ran from it like roots. Artificial nerve tendrils. Taro had seen a lot in his time, genetic mods, body hacking, even neural parasites, but this? This was something new. Naira entered anyway. Her breath hitched, but she didn't recoil. Instead, she crouched beside it. They were experimenting with cognitive mapping, she said softly. The goal was to store a living brain's memory structures into a self-learning neural matrix. Autonomous thinking. A consciousness fragment. Why? Because human memory is nonlinear. It doesn't degrade predictably. And it has odd redundancies. Like instinctive pattern recognition. Trauma encoding. Emotion binding, she looked up at him. The theory was that you could teach machines how to make intuitive leaps. Not just logic-based predictions. Real gut instinct. Taro stared at the thing on the floor. So you turn trauma into code. We weren't supposed to use real samples. Only simulations. But someone did. Yes. They continued through the facility. Each room held more broken data, more silence, more fragments of something too large and strange to understand yet. Naira gathered logs and wiped backups, while Taro kept watch for whatever had silenced this place. They didn't speak much. But tension had shifted into something else. It was during a power conduit inspection that Naira brushed too close to a collapsed ceiling beam and caught her shoulder on exposed metal. The cut was shallow, but it bled. Taro reached her before she could protest. Sit. It's fine. Sit, Naira. His voice left no room for argument. She did. He cleaned the cut with synth-saline from his kit. It wasn't the wound that got to him. It was her silence. Her stillness. The way she stared past him like she wasn't really there. You've seen something like this before, he said, taping the wound. Haven't you? She nodded. Just once. What happened? She met his gaze. For the first time, she looked tired. No performance. No scientist mask. I lost someone. During the first test runs. They said it was a neural overload. But I knew, we'd taught the Matrix how to feel fear. And the person we mapped, he died terrified. The fear fed into the algorithm. It started, replicating that terror in the system. You fed it a ghost, Taro said quietly. Yes. He sat beside her. The quiet hum of power around them was the only sound. After a moment, Naira leaned her head on his shoulder. Just barely. Not seeking comfort, offering trust. Taro didn't move. Didn't pull away. Later, as they reached the facility's memory core, the power flickered. Taro felt it first, not in the air, but in his spine. That cold, hair-raising stillness before something moved in the dark. Back, he said. Naira, behind me. But the thing that emerged from the corridor wasn't just hostile. It was familiar. A humanoid shape. 7 feet tall. Semi-organic. It had no face, just a glowing slit across its featureless head. And in its stance, in the tilt of its head, Taro saw something that made his stomach twist. Recognition. "Naira," he said low. "What is that?" Her voice was very quiet. "One of the test bodies." He was a volunteer. His neural imprint was used as a model. He's not human anymore. No, but he remembers what it felt like to be one. Taro raised his weapon. "Can it be reasoned with?" "Maybe," she said. "If it remembers anything of who it was." "You better hope so." But before Taro could fire, the thing tilted its head again and looked directly at Naira. And it spoke. "You left me." 3 words. Flat, mechanical. But in them was a hurt Taro hadn't expected. Naira stepped forward. "I didn't mean to," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I thought we lost you completely. I wanted to come back for you. You ran. We shut it down," she said. "We didn't understand. You were still forming. I made the wrong call." The machine took another step. Taro moved instinctively between them. But Naira touched his arm. "No, let me try. Naira. Please." She stepped forward. "I remember your name," she said to the construct. It was Silas. It flinched. "You loved poetry. You had a cat named Jex. And you said once, you said that if you ever died, you wanted your mind scattered in stars." The creature trembled. "Silas," Naira whispered, reaching out slowly, "if there's even a fragment of you left, let me bring you peace." The being paused. And then it stepped back. Not retreating. Allowing. The memory core doors slid open. Hours later, when the data was secured and the creature safely suspended in an isolation stasis chamber, Taro and Naira sat outside the compound, watching the stars emerge between storm clouds. "You saved him," Taro said. "I failed him first. You made it right." She didn't answer right away. Then. "You don't talk much, Taro. Talking's dangerous. So is silence." He looked at her. Her face was tired but not broken. In her eyes, something deep and fragile shone. "You ever think about leaving this kind of work?" she asked. "All the time." "Then why don't you?" He didn't answer. She leaned toward him. Not close. But enough. "You know," she said quietly, "when I saw you on the shuttle, I thought you'd be a killer with no conscience." "You weren't wrong." "No," she said, smiling gently, "I was. You have one. It's just, buried. Like mine." Taro turned to her. For the first time in years, he felt the shape of something unfamiliar in his chest. Not regret. Not duty. Something softer. Hope. And when Naira reached for his hand, not to hold it, but just to touch, he didn't pull away. Naira hadn't cried in years. Not through failures, not through experiments gone wrong, and not when they shut down Project Silas and buried the data beneath layers of black protocol. But now, as she sat in the darkened shuttle with Taro silently checking his weapons beside her, she felt something rising in her throat. Not tears. Not quite. Just, the weight of too many ghosts. The storm outside was violent, Iron's kind of violent. Not rain and thunder, but an electromagnetic pulse wave that made the shuttle systems shudder with every sweep. They'd had to power down half their controls just to avoid frying the circuits. They were stuck until the pulse subsided. 5 hours, maybe 6. Trapped. Naira sat curled in one of the side alcoves, knees pulled up, eyes scanning the same data logs she'd already read 3 times. Her shoulder still ached where she'd scraped it earlier, and her coat smelled like blood and ozone. Somewhere deeper in the ship, Taro was pacing. She could hear his boots against the metal floor. Even his movements were quiet, efficient, like violence held in reserve. When he finally returned to the main hold, he had removed most of his armor plating. The shirt beneath was damp from humidity and stained dark at the seams. He looked tired. Not physically, but like the tension in his body had never left since the day it arrived. Naira closed her data pad. "You never told me where you're from." Taro glanced at her, then took a seat across the alcove, leaning his back against the wall. "Doesn't matter." "Maybe it does." He exhaled, long and slow. "A world with too much war. Not enough sky." She nodded. "Sounds familiar." A silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant thrum of storm energy rolling over the hull. "What did Silas mean to you?" Taro asked suddenly. Naira's breath caught. She looked away. "He was my first partner on the neural interface research. We weren't lovers, if that's what you're asking. But, he believed in the work. In me." Taro didn't respond. "He volunteered to have his neural signature mapped. Said he wanted to give something of himself to the future. When the simulation started reacting unpredictably, we shut it down. Or thought we did. You blamed yourself. I designed the protocols." Taro's voice was low. "I've buried a lot of people who trusted me." Naira looked at him. "And? I still wake up some nights remembering their names. Their voices." She watched him. Not the scars, not the armor or the weapon holsters, just the man. The quiet hurt in his voice when he wasn't trying to be anything else. "Why did you take this mission, Taro?" she asked. His jaw clenched. "I don't ask questions. The job was clean. Go in, protect the asset, escort back. And now? Now the asset talks too much." Naira smiled, small, but real. "I talk too much when I'm nervous." He didn't smile, but his eyes flicked toward her. "I've noticed." They sat like that for a while. The storm howled outside, but inside, it was still. Not peaceful, just quiet in the way things were after a fire burned out. "Do you believe people can change?" she asked eventually. Taro took a long moment before answering. "Not by themselves." Naira pulled her knees tighter. "That's what scares me. Not what we're building. Not the tech. The people who make it. People like me." Taro studied her. "You're not like the others." "No," she agreed. "I'm worse. I know exactly what I'm doing." Something in her voice cracked, just for a second. It was the smallest break. A sliver of honesty, unguarded. And then Taro did something she didn't expect. He moved across the alcove. Not fast. Not with force. Just a slow, deliberate motion until he sat beside her, shoulder brushing hers. "You're not alone in this," he said quietly. Naira closed her eyes. She didn't cry. But her breath shook once, and when she leaned her head against his shoulder, just barely, he didn't move away. They left at dawn. The storm had subsided, but the landscape had changed. Entire sections of the Highland Valley had shifted from magnetic resonance bursts. Taro picked a new route back to the extraction point while Naira followed close, both of them alert. The jungle was waking. And something was following them. Four-legged, Taro muttered, crouching behind a tangle of roots. "Low movement signature. Tracking us." Naira crouched beside him. "Native life form. Doesn't match anything in the pre-mission scans. Could be a scout drone. Or something new." Naira touched her wrist pad, activating a low-range EM ping. The reading came back distorted. "It's cloaked," she whispered. Taro didn't hesitate. He stood up and stepped into the clearing ahead, rifle drawn but not aimed. "I know you're out there," he called. For a moment, nothing. Then something shimmered, light bending around a tall, quadrupedal shape with segmented armor and pulsing blue eyes. It stepped forward slowly. Not threatening. Naira moved beside Taro. "It's observing. It doesn't want to attack." "You sure?" "It's neural pattern, it's inquisitive. Not hostile." Taro didn't lower the weapon. The creature circled them once, then stopped directly in front of Naira. She took a breath and reached out a hand, fingers open, unarmed. The creature hesitated, then extended a long tendril-like limb. It touched her wrist gently. Images flooded her mind. Not words. Not language. Just feelings. Curiosity. Recognition. Memories. Human memories. "It's a derivative," she said softly. "A construct formed from Silas's neural map. Somehow the system replicated parts of him. And this one got out. Or was born outside containment." Taro said nothing. But his eyes never left her face. Naira gently pulled her hand back. The creature didn't follow. It turned and retreated into the mist. When it vanished, she turned to Taro. "You saw what I saw, didn't you?" He nodded. "They're evolving," she whispered. "Not just data ghosts. Not just simulations. These beings, they're starting to grow on their own." Taro holstered his rifle. "So what do we do?" Naira met his eyes. "We tell the truth." They didn't reach the extraction point until nightfall. The second shuttle, a larger evac vessel, was already waiting. Lights shining like a false sunrise in the trees. As they approached, Naira slowed. Taro glanced back. "What is it?" She didn't speak at first. "Then, once I hand over this data, I can't control what happens to it. They'll weaponize it. Replicate it. Exploit the constructs." Taro said nothing. "But if I run, if I disappear, they'll find someone else to finish the job." "You want to disappear?" Taro asked. Naira looked at him. Her voice was soft. "I don't know what I want. I just know the galaxy is changing. And I don't want to be alone when it does." He took a step closer. Close enough that she could feel his breath in the cool night air. "Then don't be," he said. "Taro. Come with me," he said. "I've spent years in the dark. Fighting shadows. But after this, after you, I don't think I want to keep walking alone." Her heart thudded against her ribs. "You barely know me. I've seen enough. And if I fall apart, I'll be there." She didn't speak. Just stared at him, this man made of silence and steel, now offering her something she hadn't thought she deserved. A chance. Not at peace, maybe. But at something close to it. She reached up and touched his cheek, just once. And he closed his eyes, just for her. They boarded the shuttle together. They didn't speak much. But when Taro reached over and laced his fingers with hers during ascent, Naira didn't let go. Outside, the stars turned slowly in the dark. Jorin hadn't seen his brother in 10 years, but he recognized him the moment he stepped into the dusklit bar on Galvan 4. It wasn't the face. Taro had always looked like he'd been carved out of stormwood and battle scars. It wasn't even the weapons or the coiled quiet that clung to him like heat shimmer. It was the silence. A silence that didn't come from fear or arrogance, but from grief buried so deep it had become part of his spine. Jorin didn't wave. He just watched. Taro sat at a corner table, one arm slung over the back of the booth, a drink untouched in front of him. Beside him sat a woman Jorin didn't recognize. Human. Average height. Dark hair. Sharp eyes. She leaned toward Taro as if she already knew his edges, and didn't mind their sharpness. Jorin felt a twist in his chest. Not jealousy. Not exactly. More like, the ache of recognition. The kind that sneaks up on you when you see something real and remember that you once had the chance to build it too. He stepped forward. Taro noticed immediately. His eyes didn't widen. His body didn't tense. He just stared. It's been a long time, Jorin said. Taro said nothing. The woman beside him looked between them, then stood. I'll give you 2 minutes. Taro caught her wrist gently. No, stay. Jorin blinked. His brother had never asked anyone to stay. He had spent a decade pushing people away, using grief like armor. So who was this woman who could make him want company? You're still breathing, Taro said finally. Jorin sat down across from him. So are you. Not always on purpose. That was the closest thing to forgiveness Jorin expected. They sat in silence for a long moment. Naira, Jorin caught her name in the scan tags later, didn't speak either. But she watched both of them closely, like someone who'd learned to listen before judging. Finally, Jorin spoke. I heard about the iron incident. The construct. The neural echo. You spying on me now? Taro asked without heat. We share blood. Not interests, Jorin's tone turned dry. But you made noise. Someone at the cooperative thinks you've got leverage on the Silas derivatives. We don't, Naira said suddenly. Jorin turned toward her. What? We didn't bring anything out. We neutralized the active entity and shut down the corrupted matrices. The rest, fragmented during evacuation. That's not what your logs say. The logs were edited, Taro said. I made sure of it. Jorin raised an eyebrow. You tampered with official documentation. The galaxy doesn't need more ghosts learning how to hurt. Jorin leaned back. So what now? You vanish into the fringe, live off-grid, hope the syndicates and contractors forget you exist. Maybe, Taro said. And you're okay with that? Jorin looked at Naira. She met his gaze. We've both done worse things for less honest reasons. That silenced Jorin more effectively than anything else. They spent the next 3 days in hiding on Galvan 4's lower rings, moving between rental flats and cold network terminals to dump any tracking beacons. Jorin helped. He didn't ask why. Not directly. He'd been an information broker for 7 years now. Freelancer. Technically neutral. Which meant his hands were dirty with enough betrayals to stain any flag he flew. But in the quiet moments, he watched Taro and Naira. The way they spoke in glances more than words. The way she would brush her fingers over Taro's shoulder absently, not even noticing she was doing it. The way Taro looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. He wondered if it hurt his brother to feel that much. Or if it finally stopped hurting. He wondered if he'd ever get to find out for himself. It was on the 4th day that Jorin's contact finally gave him the real reason he'd been sent to Galvan 4. It wasn't to reconnect with Taro. It wasn't even to recover data. It was to retrieve Naira. He read the message twice. The cooperative wanted her returned, voluntarily, if possible. By force, if necessary. They suspected she still had neural echo fragments embedded in her cortex. Latent exposure. Unpredictable side effects. If that was true, she wasn't just valuable. She was dangerous. Jorin stared at the message for a long time. Then he deleted it. He found Taro at the outskirts of a docking yard, checking the exterior of a salvaged skimmer. Their exit ship. We have a problem, Jorin said. We always do. The cooperative wants her back. Taro didn't react. What did you expect? Jorin added. She's one of the only people alive who understands how the Silas framework thinks. They'll come after her. They can try. You'll have to keep running. Taro finally turned. I know. Jorin exhaled slowly. Do you love her? Taro didn't speak for a moment. Then, I think I'm learning how. Jorin looked away. Taro stepped closer. Don't betray her, Jorin. I wouldn't. You have before. That hit hard. And it was true. Jorin had abandoned Taro during the fall of their homeworld. He'd chosen survival. Chosen profit. Chosen escape. And Taro had never asked for anything after that. Not until now. I'm not the same person, Jorin said quietly. Taro's eyes held him. Then prove it. That night, Jorin found Naira alone in the cockpit of the skimmer. She sat with the lights dimmed, staring out at the pulsing stars beyond the hangar shield. I never asked what you used to believe in, he said, taking a seat beside her. She didn't look at him. You mean before I created thinking ghosts out of dying minds? Yeah. Naira folded her hands. I used to believe in systems. Structure. That if we could just map enough, data, patterns, behavior, we could fix things. And now? Now I think the galaxy is made of things too broken to fix. And people trying to love each other anyway. Jorin studied her face. Taro was never good at believing in anything, he said. Except you, she replied. Jorin looked down. I don't deserve that. Probably not. But he still does. They sat in silence after that. But it wasn't a silence of judgment. It was a silence of understanding. The next day, the bounty hunters arrived. 3 ships. Military grade. Marked as privateers, but Jorin recognized the call signs. Cooperative hired enforcers. They didn't broadcast warnings. They opened fire. Taro and Jorin scrambled to load the ship. Naira had already rerouted power to the shields, moving with practiced precision. No panic. No hesitation. One of us has to stay behind to buy time, Jorin said, dragging a plasma pack into the launch cradle. Not happening, Taro growled. You'll never clear orbit with 3 hostiles on your tail. You need a distraction. Jorin. Let me do this, Jorin said. Just once. Let me be the reason you survive. Naira looked at him, eyes wide. You'll die. Jorin smiled faintly. Maybe. But not for nothing. Taro stared at him. Something passed between them. Old wounds. Old promises. Taro grabbed Jorin's arm. You don't owe me anything, he said. Jorin nodded. I know. But I'm doing it anyway. The decoy worked. Jorin's pulse beacon tricked the lead hunter into chasing a phantom trail. The other 2 ships followed, thinking Taro and Naira had split their signal. It was enough. Taro and Naira slipped through the orbital net in silence, engines dark, shields cold. By the time the privateers realized, the skimmer had already jumped. Jorin's final message came through encoded. Tell her the ghosts don't haunt me anymore. And tell you, don't waste this chance. The message deleted itself after playback. Naira sat very still. Taro watched her. He made his choice, she whispered. He made peace, Taro said. Naira looked at him. And when he reached for her hand, she held on like it meant something. Like she believed. They jumped again. And again. No destination. No plan. Just 2 people learning how to stop running. Together.